Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give folks a couple minutes to get your audio all sorted. Looks like people are still popping in. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have this webinar here today with our shark experts. I am Dr. Megan Marrero. I'm at Mercy College in New York, and I am the United States lead for the All Atlantic Blue Schools Network. And I am joined by several of our other national leads, joined by Dr. Diz Clothero from Canada. I'm joined by Dr. Noreen Burke from Ireland, and also Dr. Liz Morris-Webb from the United Kingdom. So we have a great lineup of several shark experts from each of those countries. We'll have lots of opportunities for you to ask questions. But the first thing we want to do is learn a little bit about where you are from. So we are going to put a link to a Padlet in the chat, and you should be able to see that in a second. And teachers, what you can do is click on the Padlet. You'll see a little pink plus sign, and on there you can put in your location. So you can put your town or city or your postal code, and what we should start to see is populating on the map where you are joining us from. I see some coming in already, which is very exciting. And what we'll see is that we have folks from both sides of the Atlantic, which is very exciting. Here we go. Okay, so I put a link in the chat if you want to click on the map. If not, I am seeing some answers in the chat, which is great. And let me show you that map real quick. So far, got someone in the middle of the Mediterranean. Malta, wonderful. Awesome. So I see several from Canada, several from the United States, Ireland, the UK, and I think we're just getting started. So maybe we'll check back in on that in a little while. But we appreciate you starting to pull out that map. If you weren't sure how to do it, you can click on this plus sign, or it looks like a little right, and then a little pencil rather, and then you can choose your location from there. So I'm going to stop that for right now. And just let you know a little bit about how today is going to go. We are going to give you a little bit of an overview. We will be monitoring the question and answer feature. So teachers, if you have some great questions from your students, you can use the Q&A. And so Liz will be checking that Q&A, and we'll be sure to ask our scientists those questions afterwards and get them to give us some really interesting answers, I'm sure. And we will we'll also be giving you some follow-up activities a little bit later. So we'll share that. Those are also on a Padlet. So each of our presenters has shared some activities that we can use. And I'm going to put that Padlet right in the chat. So teachers, you may want to just open that so you are able to check that out a little bit later, and there'll be opportunity to share back with us what you've been working on, and you'll hear more about that as well. So for those of you who don't know about the All Atlantic Blue Schools Network, we are just really getting started. We have schools from all over both sides of the Atlantic Basin. And we are looking to work together, to learn from each other, to share ideas. And we thought a great way to kick off some of this work this year was to talk about sharks, because there are sharks all over the Atlantic and all over the world ocean. And who doesn't like to learn about sharks? So that is pretty exciting. So that is what we're thinking about, and we can tell you more about how to get involved with the Blue Schools Network a little bit after all the presentations. As of last night, we had folks registered from 7 countries and more than 1,700 students registered. So we are really excited to be here today. And we appreciate you, and we can't wait to hear the questions that you have. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Liz, who is going to introduce Kat Gordon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharks of the Atlantic webinar. Our first speaker today is Kat Gordon. She's an avid beachcomber, which means she loves looking for things that have washed up on the beach. And she's a shark enthusiastic, and she has combined her interests at the Shark Trust in the UK as their senior conservation officer. She gets paid to search the beaches here for shark and ray egg cases, and she has a really exciting project that she's going to talk to you about this afternoon. Just an interesting fact about Kat: she loves the underappreciated, weird and wonderful species of sharks and rays like goblin sharks and flat sharks. Kat's greatest egg case find was finding a flapper skate egg case in Orkney, which is far off the north of Scotland of the UK. They're a critically endangered species, which have really limited distribution, which means they don't go very far. But the egg cases up there can be found in abundance, and they're bigger than your hand. So over to you, Kat.
Thanks, Liz. Right, let's get this shared for you. Okay, hopefully you can all see presentation okay for now. So thanks for that introduction, Liz. I'm really pleased to be part of this event and really excited to see that map grow and see schools from both sides of the Atlantic and beyond as well. So I'm going to take you on an egg hunt with a difference, and this one's for shark eggs. So I'll tell you everything that you need to know so you can go out and find, identify and record these mermaid's purses, or devil's purses as they're sometimes called. So first off, before we go any further, we need to just take a look at how sharks reproduce. So do they produce live young like mammals do? Do they lay eggs like birds? Or is it both, a combination of in between? So any of those options are all right. So we've got some species of shark, like the blue shark, who lay live young and produce live young, so just like mammals. So that's a method called viviparity. The blue shark I've picked is a species that migrates huge distances across the Atlantic. So they can produce between 4 and 135 pups, usually around 35. So they do produce quite a large number of young. Our egg-laying species, we've got around 40% of sharks that reproduce this way, and that's present in just 5 families. So we've got the horn sharks, like this one, which is a Port Jackson shark that produce these fantastic spiral egg cases. We've got carpet sharks, and we've got cat sharks. Then we've also got skate, which are like flattened sharks. They're really similar, but just different shapes. So instead of the gills on the side of the head, they're underneath, and they're generally a flattened body shape. And then we've got chimera, which are another weird and wonderful species that produce kind of alien looking capsules for their egg cases. Then you've also got something that happens in between, where sharks will produce egg cases, but they're retained inside the female, and then they're hatched, and then they're born as if they're live young. Even within that mode of reproduction, there are even more different variations among species. So for sharks around the world, we've got over 1,200 species of shark skates, rays, chimeras, and they do produce in a number of different ways depending on the species. So going back to our egg laying, our oviparous species, what is an egg case? Many of you might have already been out on the beaches before and found these and recorded them to us, or you might have looked at them and wondered what on earth that was. But these egg cases, they're like a tiny life support machine for the developing shark or skate within it. They're a tough leathery capsule. It's made of keratin collagen kind of compound, which is the same as hair and fingernails. And this helps keep the baby safe from any potential predators. The baby can stay inside there for many months, depending on species. So it can be kind of 5 months up to nearly 2 years for some of the larger bodied ones. And then when they're fully developed and ready to hatch, they'll pop out the top opening between those 2 horns on this image. So looking at the life cycle of the shark, a single egg is laid within that capsule. There are 2 species in the world where there's multiple embryos that are known, but generally it's just one egg within a single capsule. The embryo develops, it feeds from that yolk sac. Its tail will act like a pump to bring in fresh seawater into the egg case. So there's small slits along the side of the egg case which allow that fresh oxygenated seawater to come in, and it allows waste to leave the egg case. And then the embryo will keep growing and it will keep absorbing all of that yolk until that's all gone. And it will get to the point that the baby shark or skate is nearly bursting out of their egg case. So it kind of forces the top of the capsule open, and then the embryo, the baby, can swim out of the egg case, and it's a miniature version of the adult. It needs to fend for itself from predators. It needs to find its own food. It's fully independent of any parental care. These empty egg cases, once the young's kind of wiggled out of them, they can often get dislodged, so they can get brought to shore in waves and currents and washed up on our beaches. So you can then look at the different features of an egg case, and that includes the size and the shape, to work out what species it once belonged to. So we've developed ID resources for the species that are found in Northwest Europe. This kind of covers. So we've got this available in both English and in Welsh. So you can see from there, there's 3 smaller cat shark species that we have. 2 of those species have curled tendrils on either end of the capsule, and the female will use these to swim round and round seaweed, and they'll kind of be used like string and tie the egg case onto seaweed so that they are safe while they're developing there. And then these other ones that are more square, rectangular in shape, they're from our skates, which are sometimes called rays, although rays are many different other species. We've got a bit of a problem with naming here in the UK, so thornback rays are technically skate, but that's another issue that we could go into another time. And then we've also got an ID guide for Portugal as well, working with our partner Project Apeche, who are running the Great Eggcase Hunt out in Portugal as well. And then we've got some species that are found along the eastern seaboard. So the clear nose skate, the little skate, the winter skate, and again, you've got a cat shark there, the chain cat shark. So if you've been paying attention so far, we can see if you can match up a couple of these mermaids' purses to their owners, who they once belonged to. So on the left there for A, we've got the small spotted cat shark. That's a fairly common coastal species that's found in the Northeast Atlantic and throughout the Mediterranean. Next up for B, we've got the starry skate, as we call it over on this side of the Atlantic. Over in the Northwest Atlantic, it's generally called the thorny skate. Then we've got the Australian ghost shark, which is a type of chimera. So as the name suggests, that's not an Atlantic species. That one's an Australian species, but with a fascinating egg case. And then we've got the Port Jackson shark, which is another Australian species. And I've mentioned their unique egg cases as well before. So looking at those 4 species, I'll just give you a moment. I won't give it too long, so I don't want to eat up too much time from anyone else. But if you take a look at those 4 egg case options, have a look at the different features that they've got and see if you can work out which species each one of those belongs to. So if you look at some of the features, number 1 there, it's quite square in shape. It's got a horn on each corner. Number 2's very spiral. Number 3 is quite elongated. It's got curled tendrils. And then number 4 is a bizarre looking egg case that's kind of quite long, fusiform in shape, and it's kind of almost got that skirt around the edge of it. I'll just give you a few moments longer, and you can have a chat amongst your classes in your room and see if you can figure out which one belongs to who. Feel free to pop it in the chat as well, and we can have a look at that afterwards. Okay, so spoiler alert if you hadn't got so far as doing all 4 of those. So the small spotted cat shark A, that belongs to number 3 over here. The starry or thorny skate B is number 1 with those pointed horns. The ghost shark, that strange chimera egg case, is number 4. And then the Port Jackson shark is number 2 with that spiral egg case. So for the Great Eggcase Hunt, we've got records from all around the world. You can see from this map that we are quite focused in the UK. That is underneath that splodge of records. And we've got around 13 species that can be found on British beaches here. Then Ireland as well. This is the white skate egg case, which is a huge kind of 20 centimetre long egg case, which is very impressive. So Marine Dimensions, who you'll hear from next, they've got a project called Per Search Ireland. So you can also submit records to them for Ireland. We've got records in Portugal through Apeche, as I mentioned, our partner project there. Up in Canada, we've got a number of records already, including from these winter skates. And then Eastern Seaboard, so these are all from these little skate egg cases from the New York area. And then we have even got some from Brazil as well. So once you've found the egg cases, then you can record them through to us. We have got an app which we're redeveloping, which will be available soon. We get egg cases sent to us in the post, and we've got a recording form available as well, which is in English, Welsh, Dutch, Portuguese, and we've got a US version, which has got the different set of species on there as well. So I think that's everything you need to know in a speed rundown for egg cases, mermaids, purses. So get out to your local beach, see what you can find, use whatever resources we've got available to identify your finds, and then record them to us. Send us details if you can't figure out the ID, and we can take a look at what you've got, and we can add those to our maps and better understand these egg-laying species that we've got in the Atlantic. So I think that's my time up for now. So I'll stop sharing this and pass back to the team.
Thank you so much, Kat. I've already learned a lot about egg cases, and I'm excited to see what I have on our local beaches. I'm going to turn it over, I think, is Liz, are you going to introduce breed? Okay.
Thanks, Meg and Kat. That was fantastic. It was really interesting to learn about egg cases. We're now moving across the Irish Sea to Ireland to Breed O'Connor, who's a marine ecologist specialising in shark and ray ecology at Marine Dimensions in Ireland. Kat already mentioned them. They also run some egg case recording that you can take part in. But today she's going to talk to us about sharks of Ireland. She's done shark research in Ireland, in Guinea-Bissau or West Africa, and Mozambique in Southern Africa. And she's snorkeled with the world's biggest shark, the whale shark. And her favourite species of shark is the bull shark, as it was the first shark that she was lucky enough to work with in the field. So over to you, Breed. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that intro, Liz. I'll just share my screen here now. Okay, I hope you can all see the presentation. So yeah, my name is Breed O'Connor. I work with Marine Dimensions. We're a community-based enterprise based in Ireland, dedicated to marine conservation, research, and education. And our main project, as Liz and Kat already mentioned, is Per Search Ireland, which is where the public around Ireland can submit sightings of shark and ray egg cases. And there's a link to that up on the Padlet if you want to check that out. So I'm going to talk today about the biodiversity of sharks in Irish waters. So for those of you coming from a bit further afield, Ireland is a little island here in the Atlantic, but for as small as we might look at first glance, we're actually quite a bit bigger when you take into account our marine territory. So because we have such a vast ocean territory, that means that we have a lot of biodiversity, a lot of species. So biodiversity refers to the variety of plant and animal life that you find in the world or in a particular habitat. And we're really lucky to have great marine biodiversity here in Ireland. So we have about 35 species of sharks, and as much as I would like to go into all of those today, I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. So our sharks are diverse in a lot of different ways. But the main way...
I'm sorry, your slides are not advancing for us. If you want to try sharing again, perhaps.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Are they advancing?
No, we only see that first slide. Now I saw that. So if you want to try the slideshow again.
Yeah, that's not coming up for you? No.
We do see it if you click on the thumbnails on the left, I think, because that's what you just did.
Okay, so
If you
I guess
click on the bottom right where it looks like a square with a line underneath it, I'll go back more toward the right. That one. Over again.
forward.
No, go over again. It looks like a stand. Yeah, that one. You click that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why it's not working.
Okay, 1 second. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I won't go through all of that again, but basically just what I was saying, that's Ireland there. Hopefully now you can actually see where it is. And there's Ireland's marine territory. So it's about 10 times bigger than Ireland's land territory. And yes, we were just talking about the biodiversity. So one way that we can host all of these diverse species is by having very diverse habitats in Irish waters. So within this big red area here, we have lots of open ocean, which can home some of our larger free swimming species like the Atlantic thresher shark. This is a really iconic species. Its tail is almost half of the length of its total body, and it uses its tail for whipping and for stunning its prey. We also have some very deep water habitats where we can find species like the Portuguese dogfish. This is a really interesting species because it's actually the species of shark that lives the deepest in the ocean that we know of. And we have those in Irish waters. And of course, we have all of our coastal waters. So just around the coast of Ireland, we have species like the small spotted cat shark. That's the most abundant shark in Irish waters. It's an egg-laying species, as we saw in Kat's presentation, and they tend to hang out in shallow, sandy, or muddy substrates. So to live in all of these different habitats, the sharks have different body shapes. So we have this really stereotypical torpedo-shaped body that we see in species like the blue shark, for example. And these species live in the open ocean. So they're very long and slender and streamlined so that they can swim through really big distances out in the open water. And then for more inshore species, a lot of them have those dorso-ventrally flattened bodies, like the angel shark. So dorso means your back, ventral means your stomach. So dorso-ventrally flattened are flattened from their back to their front. And as you can imagine from their shape and their color, these species tend to hang out in sandy bottoms. So they're really flat, so they can burrow under the sand to either hide from predators or to hide from prey so that they can catch them without being seen. As well as our body shape, we have a lot of different sized sharks in Ireland. So the average size of sharks, if we took all species in the world and averaged them out, is about 1.5 to 2 meters. So a pretty average sized shark that we have in Irish waters is the taupe shark. These are just around that range, about 1.5 to 2 meters, or that's 4.5 to 6.5 feet for people on the other side of the Atlantic. We also have some very large-bodied sharks. We got a question in already from Ballyheigue School in Kerry. They asked what's the largest species of shark, and that's the whale shark, which we do not have in Ireland, but we do have basking sharks, which are the second largest species of shark. These grow to about 8 meters or 26 feet, and they're a filter-feeding shark, and it's actually basking shark season in Ireland at the moment. So if you're lucky enough to live along the coast, and if you keep an eye out, you might see some schools of basking sharks gathering for the next couple of months. We also have some very, very small species of sharks, like the velvet belly lantern shark. As you can see in the picture here, someone is holding that in their hand. These guys only grow to about 45 centimeters or about 18 inches. So we have a really large variety of size sharks in Irish waters. But sharks in Irish waters don't just look different, they also behave really differently. So one interesting species that we have here is the Greenland shark. These are very big, very solitary species that tend to spend time by themselves, and they're very slow moving. They're actually in a group of sharks known as the sleeper sharks because they all move so slowly, but especially Greenland sharks. They're not just the slowest shark species, but they're actually the slowest moving fish species that we know of. They're so slow, in fact, that often the prey that they hunt are sleeping so that they're actually able to catch them. On the flip side of these very solitary, slow sharks, we have the spiny dogfish. These are a lot more energetic. They tend to hunt in packs, sometimes with thousands of individuals spending time and hunting together. And then somewhere in the middle, we have the poor beagle. They can be either solitary or quite social animals, but they have a really unique behavior in that they're one of the only shark species we know of that plays. So they can be seen, for example, rolling around and playing in kelp, or tossing around or bumping into things that they find floating on the surface of the water, which is really neat. So I hope you guys can remember some of those pictures, because we're going to have a quick shark matchup game now. Oh. So there are the pictures. There's 6 pictures on the right-hand side, and the names are on the left-hand side. I'll leave this up on the screen for a minute, and I'll put the answers into the Padlet after the presentations. So I'll leave that up, and Megan, if you just want to chime in whenever it's time for this to end, we can take it down.
Yes, we actually need to move on to our next presenter. So yes, if you don't mind sharing this on the Padlet, we can ask Diz to introduce Boris.
Great, thanks, Megan. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to have you. I've got the pleasure of introducing Dr. Boris Worm, who's a professor of marine conservation biology at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. There's so many things impressive about Boris, but what I love best, he's one of those rare scientists that is as gifted a communicator as he is a scientist. So for all you Canadian schools joining us, he has a program called CBC Ocean Guy, and you can hear him talking about the ocean regularly on CBC. He's also one of the leaders in Ocean School, which is an incredible virtual ocean learning platform. So I encourage you all to check it out, and I'll drop that in the chat. But Boris, over to you.
Boris, you're still muted.
Okay, am I good now?
You're good now.
Okay, so sorry about that. I'm going to talk about the sharks of the Atlantic today. I spend a lot of time in the water. I'm a marine biologist, and this is actually my first encounter with the shark. This is not me in the picture because I was too, let's say, nervous to take a picture, and I also was alone. Free diving in Belize, but I did meet a bull shark of about this size, and it was a life-changing experience for me. It happened 17 years ago, and I've been swimming with hundreds, possibly thousands of sharks since then, and I've never, ever been threatened. So there was a question in the chat about the angel shark and whether it's friendly to humans, and I typed the answer. Most sharks are friendly to humans, or they're scared of us, or they're indifferent. I've never had a negative interaction with a shark in all my years of diving with them. They're just incredible creatures. So let's start off. We heard in the previous talk about diversity, so the number of species we have, and of course there's an incredible variety of sharks in the world. So if teachers could type in the question that their students most commonly favor, sorry, the answer. So is it 9 species, 42 species, 173 or 508 in the Atlantic on both sides? I should let you know that I also grew up on the other side of the Atlantic in Europe, and I now live in Canada, so I'm familiar with both sides of the Atlantic and sharks on both sides of the Atlantic. And there is quite a variety of them, but how many exactly? I see the answers are still coming in, and we're currently leading with 173 sharks, and the answer is 173 shark species, different species here in the Atlantic, which is really quite amazing. And most of them we really don't know a whole lot about. There's a lot of them that are quite mysterious, but the ones that we do know about, they include the world's largest, the whale shark that we previously heard about, the size of a school bus, and the smallest, the dwarf lantern shark in the Caribbean, which fits in the palm of your hand. And then there's still some space for another shark on on your hand. The oldest, the Greenland shark we heard about, they're not just very slow, they're also very slow growing. And they have been shown to live over 400 years. They only can have babies when they're 175 years old. Can you imagine that? So that's older than Canada is as a country. And then the world's fastest shark, the mako shark, which accelerates faster than the Porsche. So some really, really fascinating sharks in our region, including these 4, and then 169 more that you can learn about. What's this? It's a spaghetti plot of shark tracks. So this is the result of research by hundreds of people who've been sticking thousands of tags on a number of shark species. You see a white shark in the picture here, and on its dorsal fin, you see a satellite tag. So whenever that fin comes out of the water, it beams up to a satellite and it tells you where the shark is and also where it has been just prior to that. So someone in Spain called Nuno Queris got everybody together who was collecting these data and said, let's put it all together and see what it looks like. What can we learn? And we see the Atlantic here in the middle, and you see this huge blob of spaghetti of all the different species that swim back and forth, swim back and forth. So my question to you is, which species will travel most freely across the Atlantic back and forth? Would it be the fearsome white shark? Would it be the huge tiger shark? Would it be the incredibly fast mako shark, or the numerous blue shark? Again, we're starting the poll right now. And you can answer, you can put in the answer that you think is most likely. Is it the white shark, the tiger shark, the mako shark, or the blue shark that swims most freely across the Atlantic, most commonly seen going back and forth in these incredible satellite tracks that tell us so much about these species and how they live? There's stories we never thought possible of what these species are doing, how deep they're diving, that they're having their young in the middle of nowhere in the Sargasso Sea at 500-meter depth in total dark. We didn't know these things about some of these species, and we're learning by these tracking devices. So people are pretty much on it here. Nobody chose the white shark because the white shark is actually a fairly homebody shark. They like their territory. They go up and down our coast here on the American and Canadian side of the Atlantic, but they don't really swim out that far. They do that in the Pacific a little bit, but here they don't seem to do that a ton. So they're homebodies. The tiger sharks, they live in tropical waters and they like it warm. They don't really travel far across the Atlantic. On occasion they do, but not regularly. The mako shark more so. They're a pelagic shark, meaning they really love the open water and they're very fast. They swim back and forth. But blue shark is the correct answer. The blue shark is the species that travels most freely across the Atlantic, and you can see it here in this plot. These are the spaghettis for the blue shark, and you can see it almost fills out most of the North Atlantic on both sides. It goes down into tropical waters. It goes up to Iceland almost. So it's a very wide-ranging shark. The other ones as well, but not quite to the same degree. So the final point I want to make here is that we need to keep these sharks safe, because unfortunately we're catching them, although we don't want to catch them. There's a lot of fishing going on in the Atlantic. It's one of the most heavily fished bodies of water in the world, particularly in Europe, but also over on this side and all the way across. There's a variety of fishing methods that entangle sharks, various nets such as gill nets shown here, or long lines and other long lines that attract the sharks with bait. And sharks are so good at finding the bait that they're very easy to catch. Even if we want to catch other things like tuna, we catch a lot of sharks. So we have to find ways to avoid this. And this research I talked about actually helps with that by mapping out the distribution of the sharks and then where they overlap with fisheries as seen from satellites from space. And in the red, you see areas where there's a lot of overlaps between where the sharks are and where the boats are, and we need to look out for these areas. And in blue, you see an instance where these tagged sharks were actually caught by fishing boats. And so we know that these areas are places where sharks not just intercept with fisheries, but actually die from fisheries. So definitely something we need to work on. If you want to learn more We founded an NGO here called AtlanticSharks.org, or Sharks of the Atlantic Research and Conservation Center. There's two students of mine who started this up. You can learn everything about the sharks of the Atlantic there. It's a great resource. And then it was already mentioned, our Ocean School resource also on the Padlet has lots and lots of ideas for you to dive with sharks in virtual reality, to learn more about sharks and the threats they face and how we can keep them safe. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Boris. That was so interesting. Always good to hear about diversity and to think about some of the conservation issues that we should be wondering about and talking about. Okay, so next we are going to have Jennifer Cotton. Jen, I'm going to spotlight you. So Jen Cotton is the program and outreach manager for the Headwaters Science Institute. She lives on the Space Coast in Florida in the United States, where she before was a secondary science content specialist and high school marine science educator. She's a graduate of the University of Central Florida, and she has a passion for shark research and is the lead education ambassador for OSearch. So you're going to learn some more about shark tagging and tracking, and I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Thank you, Meg. So hello, everybody. Like she said, my name is Jen. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about OSearch and the research that we're doing on the Northwest Atlantic. So this is our vessel right here. You'll see a couple of video later on showing you a little bit about the tagging process. But before we get started, I'm just going to touch a little bit about why sharks are so important. You know, some of the panelists already discussed this. But we specifically look at great white sharks in our research, and they're vital to the health of the ocean as a whole because they're an apex predator. So they are the very top of the food chain. So if you take out great white sharks, the food source below them is going to explode, which will then deplete the one below it, which is then going to destroy the one above it. So it's just like this whole crumbling effect. And an ecosystem will crash out. So they're vital for keeping the oceans healthy. You know, every third breath that we take that does come from the ocean. And in order to keep that all balanced, we need to maintain our shark populations. Unfortunately, sharks are connected to humans, so there's quite a bit of issues that can arise from that. There's been some talk already about those. So like overfishing, shark finning, things like pollution are all impacting sharks. Some of our research looks at blood samples. So we're looking at how microplastics are even found in the blood and what it's doing to the sharks. We look at muscle plugs that are viewing heavy metals. So all of those things are coming from human activity. So luckily there are some people out there helping.
So really, when you think about
Can you hear the sound? Great.
sharks, they are the indicator species, the sentinel species, and if they struggle, we will not have a healthy, robust planet. OSearch is a data-centric organization. It's an enterprise we built to help scientists collect previously unobtainable data in the ocean to help move the system toward abundance. What we're simply trying to do is learn what's never been learned before at a rate that's never been achieved. And the only way to do that is to enable collaborative teams. That's why we have many different scientists from many different institutions, all with different disciplines, maximizing the leap forward in knowledge on every single animal we touch, and integrated into a STEM educational curriculum. And then in the long term, the children are being educated in a data-driven, centrist way to be the practical planet and resource guardians of the future. It's about total inclusion at every level. Exploration in the now, science in the now, education in the now.
All right, so as you can see, we have a massive collaborative effort going on our research vessel during all of our expeditions. The work that we've done in the Northwest Atlantic has taken place over the past 9 years, and we have been able to tag almost 100 sharks in order to get all of that research. So because of the huge collaborative work of all of our scientists and universities, we were able to take something that probably would have taken us about 20 years and get it done in 9. So in science, that's a big deal because 1, funding, 2, we want to make sure we get all the information to achieve your goals. And 3, we are sharing that with the public. So the tracker in our website has all of the sharks available for you to explore and see where they're going. So the work that we're doing does go beyond just tracking sharks, but as a student and a teacher, you can utilize it in the classroom through an entire set of curriculum that I help to publish. We are always taking emails as well. So if you ever have questions, let us know, because our problem with the ocean is a data deficit. We need information. We've actually had students that have noticed trends in shark movements and shared it with us for us to investigate, because we have, you know, over 400 sharks on the tracker. So group effort where everyone's helping and making it open source has been such a valuable tool for students and teachers, including myself. That's how I got involved with OSearch, because I was an educator in a classroom and said, I want to make it fun. So I found their website by chance because I used to watch their show on Discovery and Nat Geo. And it just brought marine sciences and made it come alive for my students. And they were able to manipulate that data and look at it and come up to their own conclusions. And again, I got a little ahead of myself because I get excited when I talk to students and teachers. But yeah, our vessel is special. The way that it's designed allows for us to get this research. Normally, you would just tag a shark off the side of a ship. But because we have this large lift, and the way that this was an old crabbing vessel, so we can fill those 4 little holes you see with water so that we don't tip over with the massive, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 pound shark on the lift. We run water through their mouth so that they can breathe, and we're able to get all of those samples. And it is a very quick process. I mean, it happens in under 15 minutes and we release the shark. So we are taking blood samples and monitoring the health at all times. We have 2 marine vets on board that are constantly monitoring to make sure that this is safe. And the sharks swim away and we can start getting all of that data. Skip that one. I think I pulled up the wrong presentation because it's much longer than the short one that I have. So here's just a clip of what our research has looked like so far. So again, Northwest Atlantic, lots and lots of data. I saw someone asking a question earlier about sharks near New York and Connecticut. Great whites 100% are up there. So we actually have done quite a bit of research in the New York area. That's where we found the nursery. So there's a lot of baby great white sharks there as well. Yes, this is my longer presentation that I accidentally pulled up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank you for having me on here. Again, we do have curriculum based on this. I think I ran out of time. Did I run out of time? Yeah, so
we did put the curriculum on the Padlet so teachers can access afterwards.
Great.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to hear all the exciting research that you guys are doing. And so that concludes all of our presenters. We have been doing some questions and answers along the way. So there've been some questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So we are now ready to hear more of your questions, and let's see what you got.
Megan, there was one that I said I would answer live in the Q&A. So that was the one that Jennifer started on, the sharks off Tri-State area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. So really good question. People are always interested in their area. And I can tell you that here in Atlantic Canada, just north of you, we have about 25 species of sharks that regularly come to our waters. In your waters, it's probably more than double that. So it's a large number of species. Jennifer mentioned the white shark for sure. That would not be the most common shark, of course. They would be somewhat rare because they're top predators. They don't come in large numbers. In larger numbers, you would get blue sharks. You would get spiny dogfish, particularly in New England. And you would get the basking sharks. And we just recently learned from Whale Service that basking sharks are more numerous in our region than we thought. And sometimes they aggregate in these vast schools that you also see on the other side in the Atlantic, in Ireland, as was mentioned. And we also have these off our coast, but they're a little bit more offshore. So we don't see them regularly from the shore. But when you fly over, sometimes you see dozens, in some cases hundreds, in one case 1,600 of these large sharks aggregate. They're peaceful, they're plankton feeders, nothing to fear there. But what a sight to behold.
Super, thanks, Boris, for answering the question. We've got lots of other questions coming in from various places. So there's a lot coming in from New York. Like you said, lots of people wanting to know about sharks of New York. One asking, how do sharks give birth? Oh, how often? So how often do they give birth? Maybe somebody can answer that, Kat or Reed, maybe?
It's a tricky one to answer because, as I said, with 1,200 species, they're all very, very different in their reproductive modes. So you've got some species like shortfin makos who they'll kind of produce their young every 2 to 3 years. So they won't do that on an annual basis. And they will have much fewer pups than something like the blue shark we mentioned earlier that has a higher number of pups. And they will potentially produce more frequently. Then you've got the egg laying species, again, still dependent on species amongst those egg laying ones. But some of them, like the small spotted cat shark, they produce 2 egg cases at a time, and they will lay over several days, weeks throughout the summer. So kind of every few days they will be laying 2 egg cases. So they will then produce quite a lot. I'm not sure on the success rates of those, although the tough leathery capsule does help protect them. They can still be predated on. Someone had asked previously in the chat about whether some sharks can still eat egg cases, and they can still pierce through the capsule. It's a bit more effort, so it gives them a bit more protection. But also things like mollusks, little sea snails, they can pierce through the capsules as well, and they can kind of suck out that nutritious egg and eat those as well. So of all of the sharks that are laid, obviously not all of them will successfully grow through to adulthood, even without the added things of overfishing and that thrown in as well. So yeah, it's quite I don't know if any of the others want to throw in any responses, but it does vary so much depending on what species we're looking at.
So I can add something for great whites. They gestate for 18 months. So that's how long that they're pregnant. So it's quite a long time. So double what humans are. So it's not like she was saying, it's not a very often process. So which is why it's important for us to maintain these species, because they are pregnant for quite some time and it takes them that long to replace themselves. They also don't mature until they're about 20. So again, we have to maintain those species in order to keep it thriving.
Thanks very much, Jen and Kat. I'm aware that the Irish and Welsh schools are about to finish school, actually, so I'm going to ask a couple of their questions. First of all, from here in North Wales, from Menai Bridge, the classroom would like to know, what's the largest shark that's been found?
It's an interesting question because, of course, I mentioned the largest sharks in the world is the whale shark, was mentioned previously before. In your waters, it would be the basking shark, as was mentioned, which is a slightly smaller. Nothing to be approaching underwater. They're plankton feeders. They're sharks trying to be a whale, essentially. But they're so large that, and they're very skittish that if they move quickly, they can harm you. So steer clear of them if you ever see them on a boat or something. But the question also has another dimension to it, because the largest sharks ever to have lived is, of course, the megalodon, the giant white shark of the Mesozoic. And that was quite a bit larger than any of the sharks that live today. And it was the largest ocean predator of its kind ever to have lived. It went extinct a few million years ago, around the time that orca whales developed, and orcas still hunt white sharks today. So there is a question which we cannot prove, but did orcas, because they're so much smarter and they hunt in packs like wolves, did they drive this large white shark to extinction, or at least contributed to it? So some interesting questions about deep time here.
Wow, fantastic, Boris. That's really interesting about the, bringing in the history of paleo sharks. So I've got another question here from Connor, and he wants to know, what's the fastest shark in the world? Is it the biggest?
So the fastest shark in the world is the shortfin mako. And no, it's not the biggest shark. The whale sharks are not as fast.
Thanks, Bree. Somebody's asking, why are bull sharks so aggressive? Maybe this is another one for you, Bree, as they're your favorites.
Did you mean me? They were the ones I first met. And Bree, were you going to answer that question? No.
No.
Okay, so the first shark I ever met was a bull shark, and they continue to be my favorite. Are they your favorites too, Bree?
Yeah, they are. They're also the first that I met and worked with.
Really? Oh, that's something that connects us. Amazing. I never found them aggressive, but sharks, the thing about sharks is they can switch their behavior very quickly, right? And they can be, like some dogs, for example, they can be very docile for a while, but if provoked, or they can change very quickly, and then they can become dangerous in very rare circumstances that I've never seen myself, nor do I know anyone who has been attacked by a shark, which is amazing because most of my friends dive and they dive with sharks and nobody has ever been attacked. But it does happen very, very rarely. And the bull shark I'm not sure it's actually more aggressive than other sharks by its nature, but it lives often in murky waters in coastal environments. And as such, it can literally bump into you and may get freaked. And that's when accidents may happen. I'm actually not sure that it is an aggressive shark, but it has that reputation because a number of accidents have happened, most of which happen in those murky waters where the shark can't actually see what it's bumping into.
Fantastic, thanks, Boris. I've got one more question, I think, from Wales before they close the schools. This might come to Kat, actually, been quiet for a while. So I've got a question which was, what's the most common shark near us on Anglesey in North Wales?
So Anglesey in North Wales, you're probably looking at the nurse hound, which is a type of cat shark. So they get to probably just over a metre. They're one of we've got 3 species of more commonly found cat sharks around the British Isles, and they're the largest one. So they eat things like crabs and cephalopods and kind of their bottom dwelling species, and are quite nearby to the coast. So around Anglesey in particular, you will find hundreds of nurse hound egg cases if you get out to some of the beaches up there. So that's one of the key species that you're gonna find for the egg laying ones.
Thanks, Kat. And did we ask, somebody else asked what was the most common found in the New York and tri-state area? Does somebody know? Did we answer that one already, Boris? I can't remember. Oh, we answered that one. I'm losing track of the questions here. So there was an excellent one that's just come in again from New York, I think, which was, which human effects impact sharks the most? Is it oil spills, garbage dumps, hunting? And how do you suggest that we reduce the human effects on sharks? It's a very good question, and thank you very much for that.
I can talk on that one a little bit. So definitely overfishing and like shark finning. So we've been talking for about an hour. Over 10,000 sharks were probably fished in this time period. And a way to help with that, to mitigate that, is stuff like this. So educating others, putting the word out about how important sharks are, because that's just one of the most important things that you can do to help as a teacher or a young person. There's other things impacting it, like ghost gear. So gear left behind, they're getting entangled, but that's impacting most organisms in the ocean. But definitely overfishing is taking out, over our 150 million sharks every single year. And it's nondescript. They don't care what type of shark they're getting either. So, I've seen whale sharks, I've seen great whites, every kind of shark, they just will take the fins. So educating others about the importance of sharks is such a valuable tool that you have, that you can do right now as a young person.
If I can just add to that, I fully agree with what Jennifer said. Shark finning, though, is becoming less common these days, and sharks are used more whole, but it doesn't reduce their mortality. They still get killed, but the whole shark is used more commonly now. But a really important solution for sharks, of course, is to create protected zones where they cannot be fished and where they're safe. And sharks are very much like whales in that respect. They reproduce so slowly and they grow so slowly that they do need that level of protection to thrive. And we can actually see this in well-protected areas around the world. I typed this in the chat earlier. Best places to see sharks in the world today are almost all protected. Galapagos Island, Cocos Island, Costa Rica, Great Barrier Reef, places like this that have been protected for a while, do still, or again, have healthy shark populations. But sadly, they're among the only places in the world that have such populations. So we need to create more of these places. And the world has actually committed to protecting 30% of the ocean by the end of this decade. And this is something that everyone can support by making it heard that they think this is a good idea, not just for sharks, but for marine life in general.
Thanks so much, Boris. I think that's a brilliant place to end, actually, on what we can all do to support our sharks. And hopefully we'll all be able to get out there and actually go and look for egg cases and take some proactive shark action together as a collective. Thank you so much to all the speakers and for speaking and for your brilliant answers. Any questions that weren't answered, we'll add to the Padlet, and hopefully the speakers will answer them there. So do check in on that. I'm going to pass over now to Diz, who's going to summarize and introduce you all to the Padlet. Thank you very much.
I'll just jump in and quickly share with everyone that we're actually doing another All Atlantic Blue Schools Network webinar on June 9th. Canada will be hosting that one, but it's welcome to everyone to join. And what we're going to focus on is actually looking at the Blue Schools movement in general, so that we can set up for next year for more schools to become part of all the different opportunities and activities that are part of the network. So you'll get a chance on June 9th to hear from classrooms and schools and teachers around the Atlantic about some of the projects and ocean action they are taking in their schools and communities, and to help inspire you to be more engaged in this movement and to help grow this movement next year. So we'll send details out to you in the next 2 weeks, and we hope to see you on June 9th. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, especially to our panelists. I know I learned a lot, so I suspect our students did as well. Teachers, we have that Padlet for you. I'm going to send you an email with all the links so you don't have to worry about saving it, and some follow-up activities. And we hope that some of you will want to share what you've done on June 9th when we have that webinar with our whole network. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of the day, and we appreciate you all.
Thanks very much, Meg, for hosting us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.